Man, it's been one of those mornings where just nothing has been going correctly. Good gracious. Great googity moogity. Oh. Oh, all right. Melt these off real quick. Man, I got a long tail on it, didn't it? Steak. Let's take these off. Hey, what's up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to Sunday Finishing Work. I'm just melting off these paracord tips while we wait for people to get here. It's my last week of spooky season. Next weekend, I'm taking the weekend off. So I won't be live streaming next weekend, but I'll be picking up the week after that as we move towards the holidays. But we got some fun stuff this morning to work on. It's a little different. And some stuff that's the same stuff I always work on. Hey, what's up, Red Hooded? What are we doing? This is fun Sunday finishing work at my shop. I run a shop called Warrior Wood and Props. I do most of my work on Saturdays, and then I live stream staining on Saturdays, and then Sunday mornings. This is when I do all my handle wraps and final touches on my projects. And I just live stream through that because it helps me be less bored. So yeah, that's what we're doing. We're gonna cord up some palm stick Yawara. We're going to handle wrap some assassin stilettos. And then I've got a bunch of stuff over here in tung oil I've got to buff out after that, and then we'll be finishing that stuff. I got tire thumpers, I got fish boppers, and I got some more Yawara. I think the palm sticks, I got some purple heart ones we're gonna be doing. I can't remember what else. We've got a bunch of stuff to finish up this morning. How's everybody doing this early on a Sunday? I'm gonna go ahead and get these. This is Pal Ferro wood. It's a really strong wood. It is used a lot in guitar necks. It's also used in magicians tend to use this to make magic wands, because once upon a time there was some lore around the wood that it could be used to create and dispel illusions. So magicians are a big fan of Pal Ferro, so they make their magic wands out of it. I had some gifted to my shop, so I'm making some pocket Yawara. out of them. And there we go. These are used in karate and judo and some other martial arts. They're just basically an extension of your fist. They can be used for pressure point strikes. They can be used for regular strikes. They can also be used, the longer ones can be used for wrist locks, stuff like that. These are pocket Uwara. That's what I call them anyway. They're fairly short, so they fit. The guy at Bone Tactical. Yeah, it is. Yeah, the Kubotan, Tak Kubota, the guy who invented the Kubotan, he invented it based on the Uwara. The Uwara had been around in Japan for a long time. When he invented the Kubotan, originally he was training Japanese police in hand-to-hand combat, and he wanted something. You know, they didn't have guns. They don't have guns in Japan. The police don't really carry firearms that often, so he wanted to come up with something they could use as a defense mechanism. So he augmented the Uwara to create the Kubotan. What he did is the same basic principle. You have a spiky end on the wrist, on the outside, but he added 2 spikes that would come out through the fingers, so that when you punched forward, you would also have an augmentation of your fist for that. But yes, they are very similar. Hey, what's up, Zach? Welcome. Yeah, karate weapons are always really interesting. The Uwara is the story I was told about the Uwara by my sensei when I was younger, was that in Okinawa, which is where karate originated, you had these guys, the Shurite. The Shurite was really the like royal family of Okinawa, and they had bodyguards. When mainland Japan occupied Okinawa, they left the royal family alone. However, they were outlawed. Everyone in Okinawa was outlawed from carrying weapons. So the Shurite bodyguards had to figure out how they were going to protect the royal family when they couldn't carry swords or any weapons. So they started looking for things that weren't weapons that they could use as weapons. The Uwara originally was a stick that went into a small pillow as like a base for a small pillow that women would use when they, when Japanese people, they tend to sit on their knees with their rear, like on their heels. So they would put this between their rear and their heels as like a cushion. So it was more comfortable to sit that way. And so the Shurite figured out, well, if I just take the base out of that pillow, this makes a pretty nice little striking implement. So that's the story that I've heard. I don't know how true that is, but that's the story I heard on the origin of the Uwara. And you have like the kama, which was just a sickle for rice. And nunchaku were originally part of a horse harness, actually, nunchucks. There was a horse harness where the 2 wood parts would go on the sides of the horse. Actually, it was oxen, not horse. Oxen. And a chain would go as a bit, into their mouth. So they found that they could swing those around as a flail, which is how we got nunchucks. There's a lot of interesting stuff like that, especially with karate, because, I always find, necessity is the mother of invention. And those Shurite bodyguards, they had to figure out how to fight without weapons. And so they created what we now call karate, but they also used weaponry. They just tried to find things that were not considered weapons. And I once was told a story about Sai, but I did find out later that story is not true. The story I was told about Sai, this is from somebody else, was that Sai were originally used when they were working on like small wagons as a way to hold, when they would have to do repairs on a wheel on a wagon, the Sai would go into the where the axle would be to take the axle out. That sounded like it made sense when I was told that, but I researched it. No, that's not true. So I don't, no idea where Sai came from. I'm sure there's a story somewhere on that. Speaking of stories, so I am making Assassin. Always wondered what farm equipment turned into nunchucks. So much farm equipment, dude. Seriously, like the Shurite, they use so much farm equipment as weaponry. These are Assassin stilettos. These are made from Kamaru wood. Kamaru wood is awesome. I had an associate give me a whole bunch of this stuff recently. They had it for a job that they were doing. They didn't need it anymore, so they sent it my way. This stuff is amazing. It's stronger than black walnut, which is extremely strong wood. This stuff has a Jenka hardness of about 32 to 3,800 pound force. That is insanely strong. Like, that is about 1,000 over what black walnut is. It is double what Palfero is. But yeah, these are assassin stilettos. These are styled after Hassanson stilettos, or Hashishin, depending on what school of history you subscribe to. The word assassin comes from a group that existed in Persia in the Middle East up until well into the Middle Ages. Marco Polo encountered them. But anyway, this was also called a mercy cord in Europe. It was a very similar thing. The idea being is very easy to slip this up under the rib cage or between the ribs to get a direct heart shot or a lung shot. And back then that was it. That was all she wrote. So these are made from, they had to be made from extremely strong wood though, because you know, it's wood. But it also made getting rid of the weapon far easier. When you have a metal weapon, getting rid of its difficulty. When you have a wood weapon, toss it in a fire and it's gone. So, the assassin stiletto. I decided I had some kind of narrow cutoffs from some other stuff I've made from this Kumaru, and it was really the perfect size for these assassin stilettos. And since they're assassin stilettos, I'm going to go with black for the two of them. I'm going to do black for the handle for the longer ones, and I've got a shorter one. I think I might do just natural jute for that one, and they'll all get a little wrist tether once I finish with the handle. But yeah, farming with the nunchucks were definitely interesting. I actually have some stuff that I made a long time ago. I used to have a shop when I was in college that was called Rising Dragons. That was my shop back then. I mostly made martial arts practice weapons. And I got commissioned by the Hawaii Karate Museum in Hawaii, in Oahu. They commissioned me to make some replicas, and that was one of the ones they wanted me to make. And they sent me pictures of those harnesses from back in the day that were used as nunchucks. And so I made them. And the interesting thing with those is that the shurite started replacing the chain after a while, or the metal part, the metal bit. They replaced it with rope because they found that the rope was a little easier to wield with a rope in between. So I made two different kinds for them. I made one with a regular like bit and chain in the center, and I made another set with the rope. I think to this day you can still see those if you go to I think the Hawaii Karate Museum still has a website. They used to have a website that had pictures of all their items, and several of my items back when I was working as Rising Dragons in college, a lot of those are still viewable on the Hawaii Karate Museum's website. Oh, I know. Actually, I've got one that I'm going to be doing today. I actually have one Polynesian dagger that I'm going to be doing. I did Pahoa last week. I had some Pahoa daggers that I made out of Kumaru, this same stuff. Those are already finished. And then this week I made, it's a different kind of Polynesian dagger. I want to say it's Maori, not Hawaiian. The Pahoa is specifically a Hawaiian style. The Maori style is a little more, it's a little thinner bladed type of design. And I made that out of orange Osage. So I am going to be wrapping the handle on one of those this morning. But first we got to get these assassin stilettos done. I don't know if I'm going to wrap the handle on all these assassin stilettos. I don't know. Sometimes people want to handle wrap, sometimes they don't. It's hard to predict. But yeah, I lived in Hawaii. I was in the Marine Corps once upon a time, and that was my last duty station. I got out in 2001. I spent a couple years, I think, in Hawaii, or maybe just a year. in Hawaii. I was 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines in Hawaii. It was a very brief period, and then turned out I had an undiagnosed neurological condition, and I got discharged not too long after, less than a year. I think it was about a year after I got stationed in Hawaii. And that was a quarter of a lifetime ago. That was in January of 2001. That was when I got out of the Marine Corps. It was a good year to get out. Yeah, oddly enough, I didn't know it at the time, but 9 months later, after I got out, a little less than 9 months later, 9/11 happened, and you know, I wanted. There was a part of me when it happened that wanted to go back in, but it was probably for the best that I didn't. But yeah, they wouldn't take you back, obviously, with a neurological condition. They're not real interested in my specialty in the Marine Corps. I was an 0351. I am so old, by the way, that my MOS no longer exists in the Marine Corps, but I was what was called an 0351. I was anti-tank assault and demolitions. My job was basically to blow shit up with rocket launchers and explosives. Best job I ever had, I swear. It was a good time. Yeah, I know, right? That's the 9 months later thing. Yeah, anytime I meet, another Marine and they ask me what my separation date was, and I tell them, they're like, "God damn, dude!" They're like, "You got lucky." Yes, I did. I don't know that lucky. It's not something I try to celebrate really, because other guys had to go and serve instead. But I definitely, with my condition at the time, it's been dealt with since then. But at the time, I definitely didn't need to be firing shots in anger with a malfunctioning brain. Not really the best scenario for combat. All right, come on, you cooperate. I tell you, it's been one of those mornings this morning. I have had nothing seems like it's been going right this morning. I was supposed to double stream this morning for the first time, but my MacBook decided it wanted to die on me, and I apparently left my cord at home, so we're just doing YouTube. But there we go. So that's your Assassin Stiletto. It's got a wrist tether that can be adjusted once you get it. Anytime I have a tether or something like that, I try to leave it long so the person can adjust it. But yeah. Yeah, they are. December of 01, I know, a lot of guys got stop loss that year. I had some buddies that were supposed to get out in 2001. They all, if it was after September 11th, if you were in the military and you were supposed to get separated, you did not. You were in there for life. Yeah, it was not. That would not have been good. A lot of guys were supposed to get separated in 2001. Did not. They got kept. Engineering can be fun, Josh. Welcome. So what do you guys think? Should I just do the tether on this other one, or should I do the handle wrap as well? What do you think? Help me make a decision here. I've got 2 more of these. I have a shorter one. I'm going to do this one in natural jute instead of black. I think it'll look better on the shorter one. December 01. Yeah, that's crazy. Hey, Adam, how's it going? Yeah, you got out. But that's no fun. Handle wrap for sure. Handle wrap it is. Thank you for helping me make that decision. Yeah, you know what's funny? Since we're talking about assassin stuff, the funny thing about the assassins, the original assassin cult, So there's two schools of thought on that. One is the fact that they're hashishin, which has to do with hashish. There was this whole thing that they smoked hash basically, or hashish, before they went on assignments. To be honest with you, that doesn't really add up. A lot of historians are like, that doesn't make sense. There was a lot of, you got to remember, white people wrote that stuff, and I think they were trying to demonize the assassins. The leader of the group, who was referred to as the old man, was a man named Hassan, and so they were also called Hassansins. And most people think that's where assassin came from, was Hassansin, not Hashishin. It just doesn't. That does the assassin doesn't really translate well from Hashishin. They would be assassins, not assassins. So, but Hassansin makes more sense to go over to assassin. So that's the two basic theories about how that name came about. All right, let's get this one wrapped up. And if you've been on my live stream before, you know I tend to do a very simple handle wrap style, and I do it for a reason. Because just because I do a handle wrap does not mean that the buyer is going to want that handle wrap. I don't use adhesives. I use a friction fit style of wrap so that it can be easily cut off and replaced. Also, if something were to go wrong, sometimes things happen and stuff falls off. And sometimes these handle wraps, you know, they're not, no handle wrap is perfect. Sometimes they break or knots come loose, things like that. And if it happens, it's a very easy wrap for the person who gets it to replace. If it's super fancy, they're going to have a hard time getting it done. It works really well. It just has an anchor cord that goes down the end. I wrap around the anchor cord and then tie the two ends together at the bottom, and it creates a friction fit that holds everything in place. But I don't use adhesive on most of my handle wraps unless it's for like a cosplay item or something that needs to look a certain way, and I want to make sure it stays in place. But for practice weapons or most small stuff, I very rarely use adhesive. Go look up Bone Tactical. Yeah, I've heard of Bone Tactical. Yeah, he's questionable. A lot of his advice is a little questionable. A lot of his stuff I would not recommend trying. It's a good way to get shot in the face. Please don't go to Bone Tactical for defense advice. Why not a handguard? Well, the original design didn't have a handguard. Most likely because something that's this thin and with this profile is super easy to keep, you know, in a pocket or underneath your clothing or in your belt. It would be very easy to conceal. Whereas a handguard, because that gives you a second dimension on a handguard, you're going to have to figure out a place to put that handguard. So that would be my theory on it, why there's not a handguard on it. And you have to remember that for assassins, something like this would have been a one and done weapon. This would have been get in, you know, unalive your target and then dispose of the weapon. So this would have gone into the fire as soon as they were clear. You wouldn't want to leave the weapon behind. So yeah, that would be my theory on why, though. It's just a matter of concealability. I think we'll stop there. He got mad at his comment section for pointing out that cast pouring isn't forging. No, cast pouring definitely is not forging. I mean, it's definitely a way to work metal, but it is not forging. No. Oh, really? Yeah, I didn't know that about him. I don't know a whole lot about the guy. Oh, well, I guess we're stopping here. this jute cord, sometimes they get these weird spots in them where they didn't get twisted quite right on the textile factory. It always sucks when you run into something like that at the end. If it was in the middle, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but that should be good enough of a handguard. They don't have to be the same because I will be listing all these separately because each one of them has slightly different dimensions. I try not to sell stuff in groups unless I can maintain some semblance of consistency in their dimensions and appearance. Red hooded, let's see. I looked up because something he said. Yeah. And that's, to be honest, it's not just him. I've seen, I studied martial arts most of my life. I've got so many injuries these days, I can't really do it as much now that I'm older. But I do see on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, there are a lot of martial arts and self-defense gurus out there that I feel like they're just watching action films and trying to figure out how to replicate that stuff. Whereas any martial artist will tell you, a lot of that stuff that looks really cool on camera doesn't work very well in fights. It does look cool, but here's the thing. If your technique has like 3 or 4 steps to it, right? In a do or die self-defense situation, it's probably not going to work. Because in that situation, your brain doesn't have time to think about stuff. What your brain needs to do is it needs 1 to 2 steps and nothing more. And so I always recommend, if you're going to come up with a self-defense, make it simple. You know, an eye gouge, an ear slap, you know, a good kneecap stomp, you know, a kick to the thigh or shins. And my personal favorite, activating the gag reflex. That's probably one of my favorite techniques. Oh shit, did I do that wrong? Yes, I did. You would think I would know how to do a square knot after all these years. All right, here we go. The gag reflex, to activate the gag reflex, is pretty simple. And it works great, especially like if someone's got you up against a wall, like if they're holding you by the throat, for example. That means they're close enough for you to reach most of the time. Take your middle finger, stick it on top of your pointer finger like this. And there's this little divot at the bottom of the throat right there. Stick your fingers in there, push in and hook down as hard as you can. And that will activate the gag reflex. It makes them feel like they're going to puke. Nobody likes that feeling. They will let go. That one I have actually tested in real life multiple times, and it works really well. When I was younger, I had a few times I taught martial arts. When I was in college, I had a small martial arts school. Just some local kids that I would teach. We went to some tournaments and whooped everybody's ass. It was awesome. But sometimes I would be asked to come and teach like self-defense courses and stuff. And when I would go, I would get the biggest guy in the room to pin me to the wall as hard as he could with his hands. And I'd tell him, do not let go. Do not let go no matter what. And I would do that and they would always let go. Steven Seagal, yeah. To be honest, Aikido in general, nothing against Aikido. The Seagal versions, you're all right. Let's see here. The Seagal versions, right? Yeah. But yeah, Steven Seagal, the issue with Aikido, and I'm not saying it's not a valid martial art. It is. It's a traditional Japanese martial art, however, Aikijitsu and Aikido. But what you have to remember about those martial arts is that they were created for a very specific purpose. They were created to defend yourself against a samurai with a sword when you did not have a sword. So most Aikido techniques are designed around the idea of someone coming at you with a sword in some way, which is why they hold their hands the way that they do, because it's that's meant to counter a sword attack. Not to say that, you know, they have they have some great locks, wrist locks, finger locks, arm bars. It's good stuff, but would I want to go in with nothing but Aikido against like an MMA guy? Absolutely not. I get murdered. Yeah, well, judo is a sport. So you have jujitsu, which is like in most martial arts, you have a jitsu and you have a do. Okay. If it says jitsu, that means it's meant for like real world application, right? Do tends to refer to it more as a sport. Like kenjutsu is usually the older Ryu styles of Japanese swordsmanship that were meant to be used in actual combat. Kendo, on the other hand, is a sport. Kendo is more about scoring on your opponent with your shinai by hitting the men, which is the helmet, the kote, the glove, the do, the chest, and you have to call those out when you hit them in order to get a point. So those, you know, that's the thing with Japanese martial arts. You have to kind of look to see. So like judo was mostly originally a sport. You know, it is a sport to this day. Jiu-jitsu, on the other hand, is not a sport. It is a sport now, but it wasn't meant to be a sport. It was meant to be more of an applicable martial art in the sense that you could break bones and really bring the hurt to somebody if you need to. But there are a lot of Japanese traditional jiu-jitsu techniques that you really couldn't do on the mat without doing serious harm to them. And as far as karate is concerned, karate is a little different because karate do is what they call karate, the way of karate. But karate, there's a difference between like Shotokan and Kyokushin, for example, the original like karate styles, and what we now call sport karate, which is what you see in the U.S. a lot. You know, it's a lot of fast back fists and light kicks. You know, that you know, trying to run in fast so that you can touch your opponent to score a point. They don't do that in Shotokan and Kyokushin. Shotokan's what I studied. I did do a few Kyokushin tournaments once or twice. I would say twice. Twice I did Kyokushin tournaments. Got cracked with broken ribs in both of them. If you ever really want to see what old school like karate tournaments were like, and still are, because they still do Kyokushin tournaments in Japan, go to YouTube, look up Kyokushin tournament. The only rule of Kyokushin tournaments is you can't punch to the head. So a lot of times guys come in with their hands here because they're trying not to get punched in the solar plexus, because that ends fights a lot. You can kick to the head, you just can't punch to the head. But a lot of times guys will stop protecting their heads because they're just trying to not get their ribs broken by doing this. So this they can twist to protect from kicks, and this keeps that punch from penetrating into the solar plexus. And Kyokushin guys are nuts, by the way. I love them to death. Oh, absolutely. My recommendation with martial arts is don't just study one. Study. I've studied so many different things. I've studied Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Karate, Gatka. Gatka is from India. It's a Punjab specifically. I've studied that. I studied a little bit of Kung Fu and Tai Chi. Not much. I came in second place once upon a time. It was with 1998, maybe 99. At the World China, the all Chinese martial arts world championship tournament. Came in second at that tournament, and I tell you, all of the guys who came in first and second, it was an open tournament, so it didn't matter what style you did. But all the guys who won or placed in that tournament were harder style guys. They were either Hung Gar stylists in China, or they were karate stylists. Because the Kung Fu stuff, a lot of the guys that were doing it, you know, it looks cool. It does. but it's just a little too complicated, and to generate power, and to really like you want the simplest point between your fist and your target. And in Kung Fu, that's not always the case. Jeet Kune Do is the exception. Bruce Lee, I think he was pretty smart. He looked at Kung Fu and realized like this was a problem with Kung Fu. And so when he created Jeet Kune Do, he eliminated all of the kind of fluff to Kung Fu, the stuff that looks cool, and stripped it down to its base elements. He kept that kind of Wing Chun punch, but instead of it being like that circle, it was more of a straight strike. Oh, you're from India? Hey, what's up, Kapil? Welcome. I've been to India once when I was about 17. I went to Punjab to do a Gatka camp near Amritsar with some Sikh friends of mine. Really love Gatka and Kalaripiat and Shastar Vidya. All cool martial arts. Yeah, and there actually is a guy in China right now. I've watched a few of his videos who he'll go around and challenge all these Chinese Kung Fu masters, and he's an MMA dude. And he's Chinese, and he'll go around and he challenges these, different supposed Kung Fu grandmasters, and then just obliterates them in a fight. These days, I don't think that anyone's accepting his challenges anymore. Oh, come to India and be a guest in your home? Probably not these days. I'm pretty busy these days. But I'll tell you what, if I ever come to India, I'll let you know. It was a little rough there when I went in 1998. Or no, that was 1998. That was 1990. God, I was 17. So that was 93. 93 I went to India. 93 or 94, somewhere around there was when I went to India. I think it was 1994. I was 16, not 17, because I was just out of military school. When I went to military school in New Mexico, and we had a lot of Sikh students at my military school, and I befriended some of them, and they were practicing Gatka, and so I learned Gatka from them, and they invited me to go with them in the summer to a Gatka camp in Amritsar, and it was so much fun. I had a great time. The travel kind of sucked because there was no, like at that time, the airport, there was something with the airports. We had to land at an airport that was very far from where we needed to be. So we had to kind of like hitch rides the whole way. Yeah, they did. Yeah, Red Hood, you're right. Yeah, they've kind of basically China, because China, I get it. They're trying to maintain a sense of national pride, and martial arts is definitely part of that pride. Stuff like Shaolin Kung Fu, those things, those are inherently Chinese things. And so I think the CCP, they really don't like that he was going around kind of not just beating but humiliating a lot of their kind of national treasures, which are these older grandmaster guys. But these grandmasters, they like, the thing is, like, come on, man, you can't be that delusional that you don't know that your style isn't going to work against someone who's using something far simpler. And it's made it more difficult for him to get fights. But I understand his point. Because that, like stuff like Tai Chi, for example, like I think Tai Chi is great for health. It's a low impact martial art. But the whole Chi thing, they sell you on that Chi thing. And yeah, I have no issue with it. Believe what you want to believe. But that Chi thing's not going to work in a fight, not in a real fight. It's not. You don't have time. Like I remember when I studied Tai Chi, they gave me this book to taught how to generate Jing and Jang, which are the different styles, the different types of Chi, internal and external Chi. And I'm like, how in the hell are you supposed to do this? Like, if you get into a fight, you don't have, this isn't Dragon Ball Z. I can't be like, I can't be sitting there generating chi while I wait for my opponent. Su Dong, yeah. The weather here is actually pretty nice. I'm in Florida in the States, so, it's just kind of starting to get cool here. It never really gets cold. We might get like a week or two of like super cold weather in the winter, but here in Florida, we don't really get much of a winter. There's probably maybe like a few days when in the wintertime when we'll get like 40 degrees, but that's about it. Oh, you can't leave the country anymore? That sucks. No, man, we do not have snow in Florida. I think if it snowed in Florida, Kapil, they would have to shut the state down. I'll give you an example. Like we're pretty close to like Georgia, Atlanta. That area, they also don't really get snow. And a few years back, they had a snowstorm hit Atlanta, and people got stuck on the freeways. They didn't know how to handle it. There were people who had to abandon their vehicles, like just left them in the middle of the freeway until the snow melted. It was a huge mess. They had to go, like the city services had to go and like, get rid of all the cars and find the owners of the cars. It was a whole big mess. I think if Florida got snow, it would be even worse. If it ever snows here in Florida, I think it's going to be like the apocalypse. People are going to start eating the old people because there's so many old people here in Florida. The snowbirds would probably have a heart attack if that happened because they come here in the winter to avoid snow. We have groups that we call them snowbirds. They come here from the northern states for the most part in the winter time. Mostly old retired people. They come here to avoid the cold weather in the winter time, and then they go home in the summers. It messes up the traffic here for about 3 months. They usually start coming around October, November, and then it increases, and then in January they all show up, and then they usually start going home around April 1st. All right, and this is my last Assassin stiletto. This is the shorter one of the three. But that one, I used the natural jute, just I thought it would be a nice difference. All right, so that's all my stuff for this first batch. I've got some other stuff I got to go over here and buff out real quick that I had to give second coats of tung oil to. The hottest temp in Florida in the summer, it gets up to 100, about 100 Fahrenheit. That's about it. It doesn't really get much hotter than that. Very rarely do we get like 105. It's nothing like Texas where it gets up to like 105, 110 sometimes. Do I have horses? No, I do not have horses. We have horses here in America, but I don't personally have horses. No. I know how to ride horses. I've ridden horses, but no, we don't have horses here. They put this stuff over here in my finished area. And then I gotta buff this other stuff out. I shall leave that there for now. So last weekend on my live, I had a guy come on and was asking me about fish boppers and tire thumpers, and I do make those. I just usually make them as customs. So I figured I would make a couple just to have an inventory. Why not? So first we got this big boy here. This one could be a fish bopper or a tire thumper. Just a basic, whacking stick. You could also use it as a do-right stick, as my Uncle Smitty likes to call them. Do-right stick is just, a good stick. You can smack somebody and help them behave a little bit. And this one is pressure treated European beech. Pretty strong stuff. This is a tire thumper. Tire thumpers are fairly simple. Truckers use them when they install tires, and they use them to test their tire pressure, make sure That if they smack it and it doesn't bounce right off, then their tire pressure is not quite right. So it just gives it also helps them find any flaws in their tires if they're not quite lined up to the wheel properly or anything like that. So they walk around and whack with these. They also use these as self-defense weapons, truckers. Which I don't blame them. I imagine being on the road isn't always safe. And we got another traditional Japanese martial arts weapon. This is the tenarashi, the Japanese war fan club. These are meant to be shaped like war fans. We're gonna put a wrist tether on that. This one's made out of zebra wood. You're 9, Kapil. Well, welcome. Let's see. And whoever was asking about the Polynesian stuff earlier, this is one of the Polynesian daggers. That's orange Osage. But that's I think this is a Maori design. I made a custom one of these a couple weeks ago for somebody, and I made a second one, and the second one sold immediately, so I had to make another one. It's probably going to be the last one I make for a while though, because I'm out of orange Osage. And then speaking of orange Osage, we got a fish bopper here made out of orange Osage. This is a smaller fish bopper for smaller fish. You don't always need a big stick to do that. Fishermen use these when they get a fish out of the water to give them a little smack on the head. It stuns them, and then they can finish them off quickly to be more humane. And then I got a couple more pocket Uwara. These are Purple Heart. I'm running low on Purple Heart Uwara, so they got their second coats of tung oil this morning, early this morning. So early this morning, you guys. I got up so early. I'm so tired. And now they're ready for their wraps and their palm cords. So let me put these assassin stilettos up. These will be up on the shop later today, by the way. They're not listed just yet. They will be. I'm just going to set them over here right now. I'm sorry if my butt is the only thing you guys are seeing right now. All right. Woot woot. Oh, I bet. Where are you at there, Sir Don? Oh, yeah? They don't want to have to issue a heat advisory because it's over 110. Yeah, I've heard in the Near and Middle East, it gets very warm. Very, very warm. It was warm in India when I went. It was fairly warm. But it got cooler as we got to Punjab because the place we were at was a little closer to the mountains, so the elevation cooled things off a little bit. Bosnia Herzegovina. I've been to Sarajevo, actually. Well, I was outside of Sarajevo. That was back in the mid to late 90s. We were there. It's a long story, but yeah, we were there in the mid to late 90s when I was in the Marine Corps, trying to help decommission a lot of military equipment after the war ended. Yeah, the mountains. Yeah, there was a war in the Balkans. Yeah, yeah, there was a war in the 90s. This is a long time ago, man. This is like 30 years ago. It's a very long time ago. Yeah, I used to be a United States Marine Corps a long time ago. I got out about 24, 25 years ago. So yeah, it's been a while. It was probably, I don't know how old you are, but it might have been before you were born. Yeah, I was. We were there. The war was over by that point. By the way, the war was over when I went. However, there were some groups, there were some factions of the two opposing sides that refused to acknowledge the peace treaty. And so our job was to go in and destroy their equipment so they could stop, they couldn't fight anymore. So we were doing things like blowing up ammo like ammo storage and disabling and sabotaging vehicles, that kind of stuff, blowing up bridges they were using, things of that nature, just so they could stop, just to get them to stop fighting each other, because they were still fighting each other after the war was over, and that was kind of an issue. Yeah, I'm 48 years old, man. I'm an old dude. I'm an old timer. I was God, when I was probably 19 when I was there. Maybe, yeah, I would say I was about 19. 18 or 19, something like that. Yeah, I think, yeah, no, I was 19. I was 19 when I was there. I turned 19 in boot camp, and then I went to infantry school, and then directly out of infantry school was when I got attached out to go do that. That was crazy. All right, so Purple Heart ones are done. Oh, I know. No, you're absolutely right, dude. That is what they did. Yeah, my government is horrible with shit like that. They'll train and arm a group in a certain country or conflict and get involved in something they shouldn't be involved in, and then later they're going in there trying to disarm and destroy the groups that they trained. We did it in Afghanistan. We've done it in plenty of places. Yeah, Sarajevo was still in rough shape when we were there. We were mostly on the outskirts of the city. That was what we were trying to. We were trying to keep these different forces from entering the city. So that was why, like I said, we were destroying bridges, things like that. It was, it was fairly simple. But anyway, sorry, I don't like to talk about it that much, so I changed the subject there. Oh, let's see. All right, so let's just do these wrist tethers real quick. Yeah, it definitely was a stressful time. Definitely a stressful time for everybody. So I gotta melt these paracord ends off. I forgot to do it on these. Otherwise, the interior cord frays out. It can slip out of the sleeve. So this is an orange Osage fish bopper. I made one of these as a custom order probably about a month ago, and I had some orange Osage left over from that order, so I figured might as well use it up. I'm gonna start making a priority. I have such a big wood pile here in the shop. I'm trying to make use of all the extra wood that I have in here. There we go. That one's fairly simple. They can wrap the handle if they want to, but works just fine as a little fish smacker. And then I'm trying to think. I think for this one, this is that Polynesian Maori style dagger. Do I support people joining the military? I think that has got to be an individual's choice. I would not if I had it to do over again. Here's my thing. So when I joined, I was young, and most young men have a very romanticized view of what being in the military is like. They think, I when I joined, I had a really high ASVAB score. I could have done anything I wanted. I decided to join the infantry because I thought I was going to be Rambo. I wanted to jump out of helicopters and get shot at. And you know what I found out? Getting shot at's not very fun. It sucks. And I also found, you think in your country, you're brought up a certain way, you're taught certain things about patriotism and freedom and democracy and all that stuff. And to be honest, most of the time when I served in a place, we weren't defending democracy. We weren't defending freedom. Most of the time we were protecting the financial interests of someone, and that I think is my issue with it. And my recommendation is that if you have any other option than joining the military, go with that option. Military, it's not as cool as the movies make it look. It's mostly misery and danger, and a lot of times losing that view of your country, because I know I did when I was in. I don't hate my country, but I do not trust my country's government as well as I once did after serving. Probably making myself sound anti-American, but that's kind of how I feel after having been in. But no, I think if you have any like for me, joining the military, it wasn't just about patriotism. Like I wanted to go to college, and I couldn't afford to go to college. And so in the United States, if you don't have a way to pay for college, you have two options. One is to get student loans and be in debt for the next, couple decades of your life, or you can join the military and get the GI Bill. So I went the military route, and it paid for my college, and I was able to get a master's degree because I had it. Because in Texas, even after you use your GI Bill, they have a thing called the Hazelwood Act that continues to pay up to 100 hours after the GI Bill, except for your fees. So I got my master's degree for a few $100 back in the early 2000s. But that was my only choice. If I wanted to go to college, I needed to go into the military. So that was what I did. It was probably a good thing. I was pretty crazy. I was a little wild in my late teens, early 20s. So I think being in the military gave me some time to kind of get that out of my system. I got to travel the world, be crazy, party myself nuts. And so by the time I got out of the Marine Corps and was ready to go to college, I was a much calmer person. Not that calm, but calmer. Calm enough that I was able to, be very successful in my college career. I was far better in college than I ever was in high school. In high school, my goal was always just to pass everything. In college, I had a 3.9 GPA. That's. I get that. That's what I think. I consider it a logical way to think, but I think a lot of people, and mostly I find is people who haven't served in the military, they really don't like hearing that point of view. I think and it kind of started here in this country after September 11th. We kind of went through a period where we almost kind of deified people in military roles, and I don't know that that's always a good thing. But I love my country. Don't get me wrong. I believe in America. I'm not super thrilled with how things are going here at the current moment, or how they've been going for the last like almost 10 years. It's been pretty crap. Like I feel like since about 2016, things have been pretty crappy here, and they haven't really got. They've only just seemed like they've just getting steadily worse here in the U.S. since 2016. But I think it's mostly because capitalism has kind of become a failed experiment. I think that it's a terrible way to run a country. Because I think Americans, we love to say that we're a democracy, but we're actually not. We're really more like an oligarchy pretending to be a democracy. Because we are a capitalist country, and in the capitalism world, those who have the capital are the ones who have the power. And once again, if any of my fellow Americans heard me say that, some of them, they'd probably call me a communist and an anti-American, but I am not a communist. I am, however, a democratic socialist. Because I believe that tax dollars that we pay should go to making life in our country better for everyone, and not just funding wars and helping out mega corporations. Oh yeah, Canada has a much better quality of life. Yeah. Well, mostly because they have universal health care. Here in the United States, medical bankruptcy is a pretty common thing, even for people who have insurance. You know, if you get sick or you get hurt really bad, a lot of times your insurance company fights you tooth and nail, even though we're supposed to have insurance to help us cover that kind of stuff. They always say we don't need universal health care, we have health insurance, but the health insurance never really helps. I've needed back surgery for like the last 4 years, and I constantly am fighting with my insurance company. It always seems like by the time I get to a point where I can get the insurance company to start approving my benefit, the company I'm with switches insurance companies, or I switch jobs, and then I have to start all over with a new insurance company, which just happened to me recently. I had a job, and I was a marketing copywriter, was my day job. And my company did a series of layoffs to replace certain people with AI. And I got replaced with AI. An AI I helped train, by the way, which I think is pretty messed up. So now I work in home renovations. I'm hoping the AI won't be coming for the home renovations jobs anytime soon. I do like stripping, sanding, painting, that kind of stuff, or furniture repair. That's my day job. And then on the weekends I run this shop, and then I still write. I'm a mythologist. I have a master's degree in English with a focus in world mythology. So I write books for Penguin Random House on mythology. Right now I'm under contract with DK Publishing to help create a series of children's encyclopedias on various topics. We did supernatural creatures. We did legendary heroes just last year. Legendary Heroes is out right now. You can find that anywhere from DK Publishing. And what else did we do? Oh yeah. Right now I'm helping them to create one called The Unknown, which is more about like mysteries and spooky stuff like UFOs and cryptids and unexplained phenomenon, unsolved disappearances, that kind of stuff. Basically unsolved mysteries kind of stuff. And they call it The Unknown. So I'm helping with that right now. We do go to other countries. It happens a lot, actually. We do that. Yeah, that happens quite often. I know I've known people who've gone down to Mexico to get certain procedures. I have a friend who had to have an aesthetic. It was an aesthetic procedure, but still needed to be done. He went to Turkey actually to get his done. He's over there right now doing his recovery actually in Turkey. But yeah, that is a thing that the Americans do. Because there are times when there are other countries where we can go there and paying out of pocket in that country is cheaper than it is to pay your deductible with your insurance company here in the US. So I think it's funny. I'm sitting here doing a live stream on wood weapons and props, and we're talking about the faults of the American healthcare system. Wasn't where I thought this whole thing was going to go today. It is riskier. It can be riskier. I don't know if it's as risky as some Americans think, but you know, it depends on where you go. If you go for the cheapest option in a foreign country, no, it's probably not. But that's true here in the States as well. If you're going to get a surgery and you go with, you know, the cheapest option, it may not be the best, but it may be the one you can afford, you know. But it can be riskier, I agree. It definitely can be riskier to go overseas to get it. What sucks is that it shouldn't be something we have to do anyway. It shouldn't be. We should be able to do it here. We're one of the richest countries on the planet, and we're still, you know, this looks shorter than it should be for some reason. Hang on, I think I got the wrong piece of paracord. Maybe no, that's the right one. Hang on a second. Oh, yeah, that is not the right length. Okay, let's check this one. That one's the right length. Okay, I'm not sure how that got cut wrong, but we're moving on. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, we are the richest country on the planet, and unfortunately, we spend most of that money on stuff other than improving the quality of life for the people who live here. Capitalism. It is true. Internet does connect people around the world, and we end up on weird topics. Last week, I had a bunch of people, it seemed like they were trying to bait me into saying something controversial. I don't know. They were asking me about, like, my opinions on, like, Russia and Israel. Like, you know, that it's kind of ridiculous, I feel. Because here's my thing about that. Like, a lot of people, they want you to say that you think a country in and of itself is good or bad. And, like, that's never the right stance to take. Countries in and of themselves are not good or bad. Their governments may make bad decisions. Their governments may do bad things. But you have to remember that a government is not the people of a country. It should be, but it is not. Oftentimes, the governments of various countries make decisions. They do what they want to do. They're not doing what the people want to do. They're not doing what's best for the people. They're doing what's best for them in their minds, or best for the people who are paying them. That's what you get, unfortunately. So I'm trying to decide. So this big one right here, trying to decide if I should wrap the handle or just leave it as is and put a wrist tether in the bottom. I think once upon a time we led the free world. I don't know that we do anymore. No, you can't. You can't physically control huge areas of land and people. And I think that's been America's big problem, is that we got this in our head after World War II and even more after Vietnam. This, which I don't know how we didn't learn our lesson in Vietnam, that somehow America, like, it's our job to, like, make sure the whole world is doing what we want, or doing things the way we think they should be done. And I don't know that that's always the case. I think most of the time it would be better if America just kept out of other people's business. But, you know, war's good for capitalism. You know, we have a lot of companies in the U.S. that make weapons, and they make supplies for the military. And those companies do really well when war happens. You think a light wrap would be good? Maybe a black one, you think? Like a black jute cord wrap? I think that would look good. And then I'll do paracord for the wrist loop. I think the black will give a nice contrast. Yeah, Israel, they import a lot of their food, and I think that's why that's expensive. Maybe. I'm not entirely sure. Never been to Israel. It's not, so I'm not super familiar with how things are run over there. That's a part of the world I've always wanted to visit, but never have had a chance to get over to is you know, the Middle East. I actually did my master's thesis on Sumerian mythology, ancient Sumerian mythology, and so it's always been a place I've wanted to visit because I would love to see some of the things that I wrote about and that I studied in my thesis in real life. Unfortunately, some of those places no longer exist because they've been destroyed by religious zealots in some places, unfortunately. Yeah. Egg yolk is so pale compared to normal. Yeah, I feel like that makes sense though. You know, like I smoke and cigarettes keep getting more expensive, but to be honest, should I smoke? Absolutely freaking not. And there's a part of me that almost wishes they would make cigarettes so expensive that I would just quit. I think it would make it easier to quit if cigarettes were just so expensive that like they weren't worth it anymore. That's what I would like. But, you know, people are going to whine. You know, what's funny to me is when they put luxury taxes on cigarettes here in the US, a lot of times they exempt cigars from those taxes. Reason being is that the wealthy in this country tend to smoke cigars, whereas the working class tend to smoke cigarettes. So it's a nice way to avoid taxing themselves while taxing the working class. In your country, it's cheap. That's good. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, absolutely. Like tax the cigarettes to pay for the health care. But see, that's saying in the US, they have these luxury taxes. They don't do shit. The luxury taxes on cigarettes here don't do anything to pay for health care. I don't even know what they use those taxes for, to be honest with you. Marlboro Gold here is about $10 a pack, about $9 to $10 a pack, depending on where you buy them and whether or not they're on sale. But yeah, that's what I smoke are Marlboro Golds, and they're about a little more than double that amount here. I'm not like a 2-pack a day guy or anything crazy like that. I smoke less than a pack a day, but you know, it gets expensive. But I would, you know, that's the thing. I would love it if cigarettes cost $15 a pack, but that money was going to like help fund universal health care. Hell yeah, I would be all about it. I would love that. But I think, and my other thing, like I feel like sometimes the United States, they act like a lot of the problems we have are just completely unsolvable. But then I look at like Northern Europe and Canada, and like I'm like, why don't we just do what they're doing? Like they have solutions that seem to be working. Why don't we do their solutions? And it always seems like their reply is, well, that's communist. Like, well, no, it doesn't. It's not communist. It may be socialist, but I'm cool with that. Most Americans, unfortunately, don't really get the difference between socialism and communism. They kind of consider them the same thing, and they're not the same thing. Also, most Americans don't realize we already have socialism in this country. Like, we have taxes that pay for things like roads and schools. Like, that's socialism. And they're trying to get rid of that. They're trying to privatize. They got rid of the Department of Education. They're trying to privatize schools. You know, it's just going to basically turn education into what happened with healthcare when they privatized healthcare in this country and health insurance and all that stuff. Made things, the health insurance companies are the reason that healthcare is so expensive here anyway. because they negotiate everything down so that the hospitals and doctors, they always charge more from the get-go so that they can negotiate a better price, which means the prices just keep going up. And if we privatize education, that's what's going to happen there too. Eventually, education is going to be affordable for those who have the money. Oh yeah, just copy them. Exactly. Yeah. Like seriously, anytime there's a social or civil problem with a country, they should just look at like Germany or Austria or Denmark or Iceland or Greenland and be like, what did they do to fix this problem? And did it work? And yeah, find one of those countries, see what they did for that problem, and see what the data says, because those countries are great about keeping data, and ask like, did it work? And if it worked, just start doing that. I don't feel like it's that difficult. Northern Europeans are great with that stuff. Like they're really good at looking at social and civil problems and coming up with creative solutions. And I think the great thing with them is, unlike here in America, they always want to pass a law to do stuff, right? So once you pass a law to do stuff, you have to repeal the law. Then you have to create a new law. You have to get that through Congress. It's a pain in the ass. Whereas in Europe, it's more of like, well, let's try this, see if this works. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something else, which is a much better way of doing things. Oh, Denmark's amazing. I've got some extended family in Denmark. And yeah, Denmark, they're amazing. I think because they have a very practical way of looking at problems, you know. Maybe it's that Viking spirit in them or something. I don't know, but they have a very, you know, they look at, you know, an issue and they're like, well, what if we tried this? And, you know, like they had an issue with like elderly loneliness in Denmark. And they came up with like a pilot program where like college students could live in homes with the elderly and help care for them as like caregivers while they go to school. So they have a, you know, that it solves two problems. It helps college students find homes, and it helps the elderly not be lonely. And it worked really well. Not enough for them to like make it a countrywide thing, but that program, as far as I know, is still going. And that's a wonderful idea. You know, in Denmark, they were having issues with traffic and things like that, so they started encouraging people to ride bikes. And they do the same thing in the Netherlands. Most things are within biking distance. Yes, education should not be controversial. Critical thinking skills should not be controversial. I think that's really, you know, a lot of people, they talk about, you know, the education is being used to indoctrinate people into certain ways of thinking. And I'm like, well, yes and no. Education is being used to teach people critical thinking skills. And when people get critical thinking skills, they learn to spot the bullshit. And so it's harder to get one over on people who have developed critical thinking skills, which in an oligarchy that's pretending to be a democracy, having people with critical thinking skills is not always ideal to the people who are running things. Because it's much easier to say something, you want to be able to say something that sounds like it makes sense, that people want to agree with. That's an easier thing to do. Man, this life has gone completely off the rails, you guys. Let's see how this one looks in this. Maybe too short. Actually, no, I think that'll work. Tire thumper doesn't need to have a super long wrist loop. I keep doing my square knots backwards. There we go. And there you. That's better. All right, there we go. Got a nice little light jute cord handle wrap. See if this, yeah, that's perfect. Nice little wrist tether. Nice wrist. This, by the way, is just a basic wood, white wood, but I gave this a full immersion bath in 100% tung oil yesterday, and it received a second top coat of tung oil this morning. So this thing is sturdy. But that's why I made it a little beefier, because it's not necessarily like the hardest of woods that I have, but it's good. This one is, on the other hand, this is European beech. Excellent stuff. Thank you. Ah, no apologies necessary. Hey, Barbie, welcome. Nah, Darren, you're good. No worries. If I didn't want to talk about it, I wouldn't talk about it. But yeah, that one's fun. That will be up on the shop later today. This is my last item, I think, for today. This is another tire thumper. This is European beech. It's actually pressure-treated European beech. These blanks I order from overseas. These are the blanks that they use to make shovel handles and axe handles and sledgehammer handles. It is a pressure-treated European beech. One of the strongest freaking things. I also make boken out of these at times. I have some European beech boken on the shop that are very, very sturdy. Hey, Kiwi Click, how's it going? So yeah, this is my last one today. I'm not going to handle wrap this one. This one's pretty, I think it's pretty standard. So I think I'm just gonna do a wrist loop for this one. And then we're gonna call it good. We have a little extra time. If anybody, sometimes I do a show and tell at the end of my lives. I don't think any of my regulars are here today. Yeah, when it comes to me, they have it sealed, and it's kind of this shape, just all the way down, and it's an easy shape it's an easy shape to shape. It's an easy shape to modify. So it's just got a taper area here for the handle, and this is the wider part. I don't know. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking maybe a handle wrap, because I feel like in photos it's going to be hard for people to tell where the handle is. All right, screw it, people. We're going with it. We're going to do a handle wrap on this last one. And then I can do a few show and tell items, and then I got to bail. Because you guys, it is Liberty Day on Helldivers 2. I don't know if any of you play Helldivers 2. I am a huge Helldivers 2 fan. Freaking love that game. And it is Liberty Day, which only comes once a year. And I think our orders for this week, or for this next 24 hours over Liberty Day, we have to kill 40 million alien enemies using a bolt-action rifle. What's crazy, Kiwi? Click this. But yeah, we got to kill 40 million enemies in Helldivers 2 using this old school, like World War I style bolt-action rifle. It has like a bayonet on it. It's a very old school rifle. It's called the Constitution. Yeah, it will. You'd be surprised though, man. Helldivers are crazy. Like, I love that game. I'm actually in charge of a faction of Helldivers. Sort of in charge. We're very loosely organized. Called 3rd Rescue Division. In Helldivers, if you get in trouble in a mission or you just need assistance, you can throw down an SOS beacon. And so the faction that I run, we're called Rescue Division, or 3rd Rescue Division. We answer SOS beacons to help rescue our fellow Helldivers when they're in trouble in missions. So we jump in and help them out, which has been a lot of fun lately because Helldivers, they moved it over to Xbox. So it's now Xbox and PS5 and Steam PC. So we had a lot of Xbox divers come in recent months. Some of them have needed some help. So, oh, you should, Darren, if you have Helldivers, you should absolutely play on Liberty Day. Everybody comes on Liberty Day. Well, that didn't sound right. Everybody plays on Liberty Day, just about. It's usually packed. And they've gotten better. Last year on Liberty Day, the servers, people had trouble getting in because the servers were so packed. But from what I understand, this year that doesn't seem to be a problem. But yeah, it's a lot of fun on Liberty. They've got a, like on your ship, on your destroyer, there's like a little video game console on your destroyer. And today, just for the next 24 hours over Liberty Day, there's the Whack-A-Terminated game on the console in your ship that you can play. Yeah, it's good times, man. I love hell divers. I'm the Nathanator 37, by the way. If you ever want to hook up on hell divers, I'm the Nathanator 37. Do I play, what is CS2? Well, probably not, since I don't know what CS stands for. How much hair in the croc is normal? I think that's a subjective question there, there, Greasy Knucks. Thanks, Darren. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the sub, by the way. Yeah, I think that matters to the individual there, bro. Oh, Counter-Strike? No, I don't play Counter-Strike. You know, I feel like, you know, I think all hair is normal, to be honest with you. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be growing it. Although I did have this one drill instructor in boot camp who like took his shirt off once, and that dude, he didn't look like he had hair. He looked like he had fur. Like, I've never seen a man with more body hair in my life. That dude looked like a cross between a human and a grizzly bear. It was the most hairiest man I've ever seen. Oh, thanks, Kiwi Click. I appreciate Kiwi Click. I appreciate the sub. Thank you so much. Just to let you guys know, next weekend I won't be going live. I'm taking Halloween weekend off. I've been working nonstop for spooky season. I haven't had a day off in a couple months. So for Halloween weekend, I'm taking the weekend off. I'm going to do like a bad movie marathon, play Helldivers, and be lazy all weekend. That's my plan. So, but I'll be back the weekend after Halloween. As we move into the holiday season, I got to start beefing up my inventory of certain things. Stuff that people tend to use as gifts, like walking sticks and staves and Yawara, fish boppers, charcuterie boards. I do make non-weapon stuff, by the way, very rarely, but I do make it. I stream weekly. I stream, for the most part, I stream on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time for Saturday staining. And then I stream at 7:30 a.m. Sundays Eastern time for my finishing work. That tends to be usually when I live stream. I've had some people ask me if I would start live streaming like more often during the week, but I work in home renovations, so I work in a very affluent part of town here in Florida, and a lot of those people don't really want their homes on the internet. So I will take pictures and post them usually during the week, but I don't live stream just because some of the customers get kind of touchy about that. Because a lot of them, some of them are, you know, famous people. Some of them are very wealthy people, and they don't want, you know, their location or to be found out. So, which I get. So I tend not to. Oh, thanks, man. I probably should stream more. If you know what, this week I'm in the shop. This week I am stripping the paint off of a Porsche 914 2.0. It's an antique. I've got the body in the shop, and they want to repaint it, so they hired my boss's company, I should say, to strip the paint off of it. So that's what I'm doing this week. The only thing is, this week I got to strip. There's an interior part in the engine area that has like a rubber coating. I'm not sure how I could stream that because it's going to be very close quarters, but I'll think it over. Oh, thanks, Darren. I appreciate that, man. I enjoy doing this kind of work, and I like to talk. So it kind of, doing these live streams, kind of a win-win for me. I get to show off the stuff I make, and I get to talk at the same time. Like, two of my favorite things. All right. There we go. Yeah, I think that's better. That gives it more, you can tell where the handle is. Now we're going to put this last wrist loop in. And then I've got one thing I want to show and tell for you guys. That's a project I'm going to be working on next month. making a huge Polynesian shark tooth club out of rosewood. It's taking me a little while because I have to hand shape it and hand sand it, and it is a behemoth, and it is taking me some time. There's some flaws in the wood, so I'm having an issue. It's just taking me a little longer to get it shaped out. I also need to make sure it's balanced. Even though it's a club, it's still very forward heavy. But let me go grab that real quick. It's right in the next room. The wood color on this is intimidating. Yeah, that European beech has a very tight grain. This stuff is stronger than American hickory, stronger than ash. It's good stuff. Stronger than oak. It's good. Not as strong as, like, you know, Pau Ferro or Kumaru, but for a tire thumper, you couldn't ask for a better wood. Oh, I'll be right back. Let me go. Oh man, I've been sitting down too long. I'm so old. Why am I so old? All right. This is the Polynesian War Club I'm working on. This forward curve here is what I'm trying to shave out, and I'm having to do it with a draw knife, and because of that curve, it's just taking me a while. But I want to get it just shaved down maybe a few more millimeters so that it has a better balance. It's very, very forward heavy. It's about 4 feet long. This is a big one. When I'm done with this, it's going to get sanded probably up to about 600 grit. And then I will cut notches on this part here and this area right here. I've got tiger shark teeth that'll get embedded into this and into that area there. And then I will use jute cord and drill holes in the teeth and use jute cord to tie those together. And I need to look up some Polynesian like symbols probably, and I'll use a Dremel tool to carve some symbols into this. 2003 Chevy Impala for sale. Are you trying to sell your car on my live stream, Corey? Hey, take it easy, Kiwi. Yeah, this is actually, the shape of this is a Polynesian shape. That's what this piece of rosewood, when I got it, it was a live slab piece that had cracked. So I was able to get it for very cheap. But I shaped it out so that the wood grain follows the curve, that's kind of the Polynesian style with that. But yeah, a lot of Polynesian weapons, a lot of indigenous cultures, especially in the Americas and the Pacific Islands, they have that kind of similar look, mostly because any culture that was still using wood and stone as opposed to metal, they did similar things. Like wood daggers and war clubs with obsidian or shark teeth, depending on where they were from. The Aztecs, though, they tended to use obsidian for theirs, whereas the Polynesian cultures, because they had access to shark teeth, tended to use shark teeth. Oh, okay. I was like, I didn't see that part. Sorry, Corey. I was like, why is he coming in here trying to sell his car? Teeth, broken rocks, yeah, flint nap rocks, anything that's got an edge. Because the nice thing about clubs like this is that by using shark teeth or obsidian, when they use them in one battle, the obsidian and shark teeth would probably get cracked and broken throughout the course of fighting with it. And so it was very easy to just pop those out and replace those again. And you got, in the next battle, you've got another club with new blades on it, basically. So yeah, that was going to be cool. My goal is to have that one done in time for Black Friday. With Black Friday, I'm going to start my holiday sale. Which, by the way, right now, everything in my shop, you can find a link to my shop in my link tree in my bio. The eBay shop is what I would recommend using. My Shopify shop is not functioning right now because Shopify sucks and their user support is terrible. But everything in my shop's 13% off until November 1st. So I would highly recommend, if you want to get something on the cheap, go to my shop, as I will not have a sale again until probably the week of Black Friday. Yeah, I used to drive an Impala, actually. I had an Impala. My first 2 cars out of college were Impalas. Yeah, same material type, simple tools. You know, it made things. What I think's funny, you know, I was talking to somebody recently about, you know, the fact that I make handmade practice weapons, and they were asking me what dimensions are on certain things, and I'm like, well, that's not a thing. Like a lot of melee weapons that are from like before we had mass production, for example, there was not like standards. Like there was a style of a weapon, but oftentimes you had different blacksmiths, you had different buyers, and a lot of times knights and different warriors, they would ask for specific little tweaks to their weapons that worked best for them. So you had a lot of custom stuff going around, which is why, you know, the old Scottish claymores, they didn't all look the same. All right, thanks, Darren. But anyway, folks, I think that's about it for me today. I am exhausted. I was up a little later than I should have been last night. And I go home, I got to add all this stuff to the shop and do some laundry and all that kind of jazz. Yeah, that's the funny thing with the replaceable edge. The thing that I don't like about it, though, is I see a lot of people selling, you know, like replicas of Aztec and Polynesian weapons, and it's pretty obvious that they've epoxied those blades into place, which is easier, instead of tying them into place. So replacing them is, if you do have a broke piece, is virtually impossible. What they've created is essentially a wall hanger, which I get. That's probably what most people buy that stuff for, is to put into a collection to hang on the wall. But if they were to fall, or you were to crack a tooth or crack a blade, you know, it makes it far harder to. That's why I'm trying to do mine in a way that they can be replaceable. Right, it's just a showpiece, which is fine. I get that. I don't know. I always like the challenge of trying to make my stuff functional. Like I make battle bats, for example. You know what? You guys want to see one of my battle bats? That's a good idea. I will show and tell my battle bat. I feel like I do this every time, but I make custom baseball bats for people, and I make mine functional. They look cool, but they actually also work. I'll be right back. This is one of my favorite things in the world to make. This is just one of the kinds that I've made. I make custom zombie apocalypse style battle bats. This particular one is an axe bat. I call it the no-brainer. I had to make a custom order for somebody that they wanted what is it called? Days Gone replica from a video game. So I made that for them, but I made this one as a proof of concept, and I gave it my own paint job because I wanted it to look cool. And I call it the no-brainer. But it has got a circular saw blade that's been cut in half so that the teeth face down on both sides. You want the teeth facing down on both sides, so that way no matter which direction you swing, the teeth are moving in the direction of your swing. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed making this. And the saw blades are embedded into the wood. Then they're embedded with epoxy. Then they are sealed with plumber's putty, steel plumber's putty. So these blades are not going anywhere. Like these are in the wood. They're good to go. Right. You're just sticking them with the teeth. You gotta be able to cut through. And yeah, I really enjoyed making this one. I make nail bats. I've made so many Negan bats. I get all kinds of different requests for like different themed barbed wire bats. I've done a Hello Kitty barbed wire bat. I've done a Barbie barbed wire bat. I've done I did a Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy Krueger themed barbed wire bat. I do all different kinds of custom battle bats. One of my favorites I did last Christmas. I had a guy who he usually buys about a bat for me a year. Um, he always comes to me with the coolest ideas. He wanted a machete blade embedded into his, with spikes going around the rest of it. So I did like a few crowns of spikes and a machete blade embedded in it, and I made it chili pepper red with a black machete blade, and then used black paracord to wrap it. Oh, it looks so good. I was really proud of that one. That one was fun. Teletubbies theme bat? Yeah, I can do Teletubbies. I can do anything. You know, that's the thing. Like, some people, they'll come to me and they don't even want like crazy stuff. They just want a custom baseball bat, which I'll do those too, but I usually charge less for those. My custom battle bats are a little more expensive, but my regular custom baseball bats, I usually tell people just to contact me. If it's something simple, they don't want blades or barbed wire or nails or anything like that, I can do them for way cheaper. Yeah, so I did it in a way where the blade extended from the top by just like an inch or two, so you had that tip of the machete blade, and the rest of it embedded all the way down, so that the handle of the machete, I left the tang on the machete blade, was here, and I used the same process. I embedded it in the wood, then I used industrial epoxy, and then steel plumber's putty to keep that in place. And then I wrapped it with paracord around the handle here where the machete handle was. Then I wrapped this part of the handle also with paracord, and it looked pretty cool. Yeah, he always comes to me with cool ideas. That guy, he's come to me with a few interesting ones over the years. But yeah, he's a good customer. I don't know. That was back when I was on Etsy. I hope that guy can still find me. I know I lost some customers when I got booted off of Etsy for selling Eskrima sticks about a year ago. Yeah, the machete had a tang, and the tang was also embedded into the bat. But yeah, about a year ago, I was doing really well on Etsy, and they have a rule about selling batons on Etsy, which I didn't sell batons. I sold Eskrima sticks. Which are by definition not batons because of their length. But they changed the rule that basically any stick that was like 36 inches or smaller was considered a baton. So they got a bunch of us that way. They got anybody who was selling. I think Etsy just didn't want people selling martial arts stuff on their platform, so they busted a whole bunch of people that way by changing one rule. No, Etsy, they're actually pretty good with that. When you create an Etsy account as a seller, you have to submit like your driver's license, a picture of your face, your email, the whole deal, and I would have to get another person like to create a whole new thing for me. And to be honest, it's just not worth the trouble. I'm doing fine on eBay. Etsy, they want people, they want Instagram savvy white ladies who are selling, you know, jewelry and candles and stuff. They don't want some weird middle-aged guys selling battle bats and practice weapons. That's not what they're interested in. And a Eskrima stick, yeah. I sell these. Well, I can show you guys. I sell Nightwing Eskrima sticks. They're Nightwing inspired Eskrima sticks, and they didn't like them. But what I don't get is you can buy a knife or a sword on Etsy, and that doesn't seem to be a problem. But a stick is where Etsy draws the line. Hey, I'll put this up and I'll show you one of the Nightwing Eskrima sticks. Be right back. So yeah, these are what got me in trouble with Etsy. These are they're inspired by Nightwing, the former Robin of Batman and Robin. He has Eskrima, studies Eskrima, so he fights with Eskrima sticks. His are blue and black, so I used basically painted rattan and blue paracord, which gives you a good striking surface. It protects your wood, and it gives you a nice grip. And it also looks cool. I have a lot of Nightwing cosplayers that use these because they give a nice functional option. You know, a lot of the fancy ones that have like, you know, LED lights and stuff in them, they look good, but if you try to use them, they crack and fall apart. But yeah, this I don't know. I would not consider these batons like at all. Like, I don't know. That was the thing. I never understood it. And Etsy, they don't really give you a chance to defend yourself. They just kind of, they're like, we're going to evaluate your account and decide if you're going to be permanently banned. And then they tell you you're banned. They never give you a chance to, they don't ever answer any questions. They just tell you why you're banned. And even if it doesn't make sense, you don't get a chance to really do anything. Yeah, I know. That's the thing. Like, I can buy a murder knife. I can buy a kukri, okay, that's made in Nepal by Gurkhas, okay? I can buy one of those on Etsy, no problem. But a stick, that's entirely too dangerous for Etsy. They don't want that at all. Not sure what their deal is with sticks, but they don't like it when you sell sticks on Etsy. They had issue with my Yawara as well, my palm sticks. But that was the funny thing. On Etsy, they didn't care if you sold them. They just wanted you to call them massage sticks instead. So I called them massage sticks. And that was fine. They had no issue with massage sticks. But palm sticks, same exact thing. We're just calling it something else. Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is called electric blue. This particular paracord. It's got almost a metallic kind of look to it. I don't know how well that shows up on camera here, but what it does do on camera though is because it reflects light so well, you know, you can definitely tell it contrasts very well with the black. Black and blue is hard to get a good contrast, so I went with an electric blue, which has more of a metallic look to it, so it reflects light better. So that way cosplayers, when they use it, you know, you always want something that looks good on camera. So you definitely can see the blue. But I sell these to cosplayers. I sell them a lot to martial arts guys who just want to have some Eskrima sticks that look like Nightwing sticks. I used to make them out of oak, but I had a guy who studied Eskrima, and he's like, you know, I don't hate the oak, but he's like, but I'm more used to the feel and width of rattan. And so I made a set of rattan as a test for him. And he really liked them, so I started making them out of rattan instead of oak. But yeah, I always try to put a little thought into what I'm doing. You know, like even with like palm sticks, you know, I try to look at what color of paracord is going to look good with the wood. It's going to contrast, but also complement the color. Sometimes I'll go with red, sometimes black, sometimes gold, sometimes blue. But yeah, I really love those. Those are a lot of fun. I wish Etsy had not been so hasty. It wasn't just me. I had several other guys that I knew on Etsy who also ran shops similar to mine that were let go because Etsy didn't like what they were selling. And they used that same Eskrima stick rule that they switched. And they didn't call it, they called it the baton rule. What's funny though, it's like this, I could sell this on Etsy as a tire thumper, see, not a baton. And they would be fine with that. But an Eskrima stick, even though it's not a baton, they said it was a baton. I don't really get that. Because to me, this is more of a baton than an Eskrima stick is, but it's a tire thumper so I can sell it. Like, their rules don't make any sense. I do. Sometimes I do. I have a weird shop. Like, I often find that, like, advertising for my shop's a little difficult because I usually get the weirdos, which is fine. That's who I want. Like, I want the people who want the weird stuff. Like, that's what I tend to make. Like, I make some normal stuff, but I like to make things that other people aren't making. You know, like I make boken, but I I don't sell that many. Like I make wasters though. I make tons of wasters for European martial arts, which are basically boken for European martial arts, and I make those for like guys who do boo hurt, armored combat, SCA, HEMA, and I sell a lot of those because no one really makes wooden sword wasters that are meant to actually be used. A lot of them are very pretty but break very easily. Mine are not pretty, but goddamn, they will last you a long time. The boo hurt guys and armored combat guys love them because they can smack the shit out of each other in full armor and not break them. And yeah, I know, I'd rather get hit by a stick than a tire thumper too. And the other reason they like my stuff is that I guarantee all of my boken and all of my wasters. So, and actually all of my practice weapons. If it's called a practice weapon, it is guaranteed in my shop. So if you buy a boken or a waster or any practice weapon from me and it breaks when it should not break, like if you go to spar with a waster and it breaks on you within a year of you buying it, actually I don't even really put a time limit on it, but you know, if it's been years I might, but if it breaks when it's not supposed to, I replace it free of charge. You don't have to return the old one to me. I just make you a replacement. I send it to you. All I ask is you just send me a picture of it so I can see how it broke. Because sometimes it's a wood grain issue, sometimes it's a design issue, but I can't tell if I don't see it. And then just tell me how it broke. I've been doing this for 4 years now with this shop, not counting when I was in college, but these days I've been doing this for about 4 years. I've only had one person ask for a replacement, and that person was striking their boken against a steel practice dummy that was embedded in the ground in concrete. So they were kind of young and they were kind of learning. So I used it as a learning moment, teaching moment for them. Taught them how to pad their dummy properly and send them a replacement. But yeah, no, I've almost never had people ask for replacements because my stuff lasts a really long time. That's why it's guaranteed. I pay attention to wood grain. I give it a very good sanding. It gets a full tung oil soak. All of my stuff is meant to last. Oh, no, I'm not impressive. I just look good on paper, Darren. Somebody was telling me last week something like that, and I'm like, no. I got all the flaws, my man. I got all the injuries. I'm mentally a little mentally unstable sometimes. But yeah, no, I'm way more impressive on paper than in person. I got all the flaws in reality, but I look great on the surface. Oh yeah, blacksmithing. I don't woodwork very often. Every now I have some metal fabricators that I work with when I do need metal. Like if I have something where I need metal to be worked a certain way, or I need something maybe just cut or modified, I will contact my metal fabricator guys and they'll do it for me. Like that bat with the saw blade, I didn't need them for that. I just took a table saw blade and used my Dremel tool to cut it in half. Took way longer. I probably could have gotten it done faster. But sometimes, like I had one where a guy wanted a chain like embedded in a bat, so I had to have the chain kind of modified so that I could embed it into the bat. Hey, no worries, Darren. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm about done for today anyway. I really appreciate the questions and the conversation. I do have an angle grinder, Serdan. I do. I have an angle grinder in the shop, and I do use it sometimes. But for that one, I needed to have a very, very even line. And it was easier to keep that even line with like a cutting wheel on a Dremel tool. And I also didn't want to lose too much metal, and an angle grinder wheel tends to be thicker. So I just needed a quick line that was thin and straight. So the Dremel tool worked better for that. I do have an angle grinder. I mostly use that for power carving sometimes. Like I'm probably going to use it on that Polynesian club because I've been trying to shape it out with my draw knife, and it's such a hard wood. It's really difficult to get the amount off that I need. So I think probably this week I'm going to take an angle grinder to it and see if I can get it finished and shaped out. So I want to get the full body of the club shaped and sanded before for like mid-November, so I can be putting the finishing touches on it before Black Friday. All right, you guys, we're about out of time for this morning. I really appreciate those of you who hung out with me and asked me questions. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, no, angle grinder rasp disc works great. Yeah, they work awesome. It's probably what I'll be using to shape that Polynesian club. But if you like what you saw today, please like, subscribe, all that jazz. If you're interested in anything you've seen today or interested in seeing my shop's inventory, you can go to my bio, see my link tree, go to the eBay shop. My full inventory is at Warrior Wooden Props on eBay. I do custom orders as well. You can contact me on YouTube. You can contact me on eBay. You can also contact me at warriorwoodandprops.com. There's a button at the top of the website to contact me if you're interested in a custom order. Unfortunately, my website, that's all I can do with it right now are custom orders. But thank you guys for hanging out with me, as I said. And I will see you guys weekend after next. I am out next weekend. There will not be a live on Saturday or Sunday next weekend. I'm taking Halloween off. I need a break, man. I've been working 2 months straight for spooky season and I'm tired. All right, you guys. Hey, thank you for the cool conversation, Mr. Dunn. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Darren. Everybody who showed up. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you guys next week. Week after next. Take care.